My name is Alara, and I am 29 years old. For most of my life, I have curated landscapes for others, shaping earth and stone, water and foliage into places of peace and beauty. I am a landscape architect, a profession I chose because it felt like a tangible way to create harmony in a world that often feels dissonant. I live in a small bungalow nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, a place where the morning mist softens the edges of the world and the rhythm of the seasons is a constant, gentle companion. It is a life I built for myself, piece by piece, far from the coastal New England town of Seacrest where I grew up. Last autumn, on a crisp October evening, I discovered through a cousin's Instagram post that my younger brother, Liam, was hosting a lavish engagement party. The entire sprawling canopy of our family tree had been invited. Everyone, it seemed, except for me. When I called my father, Arthur, his voice was laced with the familiar, weary pragmatism that had defined his fatherhood. "It's just a gathering, Alara," he'd said, the dismissal echoing down the 1,000 miles between us. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Hurt and bewildered, I chose not to fight. Instead, I followed through with a long-planned solo hiking trip, seeking solace in the mountains that had become my sanctuary. I had no way of knowing that a single, quiet photograph from that trip, a picture of me smiling against a backdrop of autumn foliage, would shake the very foundations of my family, unearthing fault lines that had remained hidden for decades. This is the story of how that photograph and the silence that preceded it taught me the difficult, necessary lessons of self-worth, the art of drawing boundaries, and the complicated truth that sometimes you must get lost from your family to find your way back to them and to yourself. Growing up, Liam and I were a unit, a two-person tribe navigating the often choppy waters of our parents' marriage. He is 3 years my junior, and from the moment my parents brought him home, I felt a fierce, primal sense of responsibility for him. Our parents were good people, but they were caught in their own orbits. My father, a respected maritime lawyer, was governed by the tides of his work, often absent in body and, even when present, distant in spirit. My mother, Eleanor, poured her formidable energy into a constellation of committees and charitable causes, her love a diffuse light spread thin across the community. It left Liam and me in the quiet spaces of our rambling seaside house, two small satellites orbiting a distant sun. I remember the summer I was 12 and he was 9, the summer we built the treehouse. It was my design, sketched onto graph paper with architectural precision, but it was his unwavering belief that brought it to life. For weeks, we scavenged scrap lumber from a nearby construction site, hauling it back in our red wagon. My father, in a rare weekend moment of engagement, showed us how to safely use a handsaw and a hammer. But after that initial lesson, he retreated back to his study, and it was just us again. I can still feel the satisfying thud of the hammer, the scent of sawdust and salt air, the sting of the occasional smashed thumb. When we finally hammered in the last nail on the crooked little door, Liam looked at me, his face smudged with dirt and glowing with a pure, unadulterated pride. "We did it, Eli," he'd breathed, as if we had built a cathedral. "You and me." In that treehouse, we weren't just siblings, we were co-conspirators, partners, the architects of our own small world. When he was in middle school, a group of older boys started teasing him for his lanky frame and the thick glasses that always seemed to be sliding down his nose. I was a freshman in high school, armed with a newfound, fragile confidence. I found the boys by the bleachers after school and, without raising my voice, explained in meticulously calm detail what would happen if they ever bothered my brother again. I have no memory of what I said, only the look of surprised respect on their faces. The bullying stopped. That night, Liam left a carefully folded piece of notebook paper on my pillow. Inside was a drawing of me as a knight in shining armor, standing over a vanquished dragon that bore a striking resemblance to the lead bully. Our bond weathered the storms of adolescence. We developed our own friends and interests. I found my tribe in the art room, he in the science lab, but our alliance remained. We were the keepers of each other's secrets, the interpreters of our parents' moods, the ones who knew that a slammed door from Dad meant a lost case and a flurry of baking from Mom meant a committee meeting had gone poorly. The first real distance between us was geographic. After college, I was offered a position at a prestigious firm in Asheville, a place that felt like a different universe from the windswept coast of Seacrest. Liam was finishing his engineering degree at a university closer to home. We promised it wouldn't change anything. For the first year, it didn't. We had weekly calls that stretched for hours. I flew home for his graduation. He spent a month with me in Asheville, marveling at the mountains and complaining good-naturedly about the humidity. But slowly, inevitably, life began to fill the spaces our weekly calls once occupied. His calls became less frequent. My texts would sometimes be answered with a single emoji. I told myself it was natural. He was building a career at a top engineering firm in our hometown, forging his own life, his own identity separate from being my little brother. Then came Chloe. Liam met her at a professional development conference a little over a year ago. From the sparse details he offered, she was bright, driven, and worked in corporate marketing. In the entire year of their relationship, I had met her only twice, during brief, whirlwind holiday visits home. Both times, she was perfectly polite, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. She asked about my work with a detached curiosity, her questions feeling more like items on a checklist than genuine interest. Whenever I'd start to tell a story from our childhood, a remember when tale involving Liam, her attention would drift, her gaze finding something more interesting across the room. I noticed a distinct cooling in Liam's demeanor after he and Chloe became serious. Our conversations, when they happened, felt stilted, as if he were speaking on a monitored line. He'd cut our calls short, citing a dinner reservation or a deadline. The inside jokes that had once been our private language went unanswered. An invitation for him to visit me in Asheville was met with a vague, "We're so swamped right now, maybe next year." Still, I never imagined the fissure was deep enough to swallow an invitation to his engagement party. I had been his knight, his co-conspirator, his truest north. I believed that bond was forged of something stronger than time or distance or new love. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday night in October when the world tilted on its axis. I was curled on my sofa, a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands, scrolling mindlessly through Instagram while a documentary about moss played softly on the television. I stopped on a post from my cousin, Isabel. It was a photo of her holding up two different cocktail dresses, a glittering emerald green and a sophisticated navy blue. The caption read, "Help. Can't decide what to wear for Liam and Chloe's engagement celebration this weekend. So excited. #family #lovebirds." I read it once, then again. Engagement celebration. This weekend. A cold knot formed in the pit of my stomach. Surely, there was a mistake. An oversight. Liam would never have a party like this and not tell me. My fingers, suddenly clumsy, fumbled with my phone. I checked my email, sifting through the junk folder with a rising sense of panic. Nothing. I walked to the small table by my front door where I kept my mail, sorting through bills and catalogs. No elegant, cream-colored envelope. I checked my voicemail, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Nothing. With a trembling hand, I called my mother. Eleanor has always possessed a remarkable ability to skate over the surface of any unpleasantness, and this call was a masterclass in evasion. "Mom, I just saw Isabel's post. Is Liam having an engagement party this weekend? I think my invitation must have gotten lost." "Alara, darling. I was just thinking of you," she chirped, her voice a full octave higher than usual, a sure sign of her discomfort. "How is the garden coming along? Did those Japanese maples take?" "The maples are fine, Mom. The party. What's going on?" A beat of silence. Then, a nervous little laugh. "Oh, that. It was all so last minute, you know. Chloe's parents insisted. Her grandmother is having a knee replacement soon, and they wanted to do something before that. That doesn't explain why I wasn't invited." The knot in my stomach tightened into a cold, hard stone. Another pause. "I assumed Liam had spoken to you. You know how he gets with details. His head is so full of blueprints and schematics. So I'm not invited?" I asked, my voice small. "Well, dear, it's really just a small thing. A little get-together for the two families to officially meet. Nothing grand. The careful phrasing, the deliberate downplaying, it was all the confirmation I needed. I ended the call with a hollow promise to talk soon, a familiar ritual of avoidance we both understood. My next call was to my father. Arthur was not a man for subtleties. If I wanted the unvarnished truth, he was the one to ask. Dad, what is this about Liam's engagement party? Mom's being strange, and I seem to be the only person who hasn't heard about it. A heavy sigh crackled through the phone. Alara, it's just a formality. The Hamiltons meeting the family. It's not something you need to trouble yourself with. But Isabel is going. It sounds like a big deal. Your cousin has always had a flair for the dramatic. It's dinner at the Seacrest Yacht Club. Chloe's father is the Commodore. So I'm not invited, I stated, needing to hear the words, blunt and undeniable. Look, Alara, don't take it personally. The guest list was complicated. It's just a dinner. It's not worth the expense and hassle of you flying all the way across the country. Your work is important. Focus on that. After hanging up, I returned to social media, this time with the grim purpose of an investigator. My aunt had posted about her appointment at the salon for the big event. A younger cousin complained about having to find a tie for Liam's fancy party. The final, crushing blow came when I found a comment tagging a private event website. I couldn't see the details, but the header was clear. A celebration of love for Liam and Chloe, complete with a professionally designed logo and a guest count that was clearly in the triple digits. My hands were shaking as I dialed Liam's number. It went directly to voicemail. I left a message, my voice strained with the effort of sounding calm. Hey Liam. I heard about the party this weekend. Give me a call. An hour later, a text appeared. Not a call. A text. Crazy busy with work and party prep. Talk soon. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Not even an acknowledgement of the gaping wound he had just torn open. The truth was now stark and unavoidable. My brother, my partner in the treehouse, the boy whose battles I had fought, was celebrating one of the most important milestones of his life, and he had made a conscious decision that I would not be a part of it. Sleep was impossible that night. I was tossed on a turbulent sea of emotions, hurt, rage, confusion, a bitter self-doubt, and then back to the profound, hollow ache of hurt. At 2 a.m, I called my best friend, Maya, in Chicago. This better be good, she mumbled into the phone. Liam's having a massive engagement party, and I'm the only person in the family who wasn't invited, I said, the words cracking. She was instantly awake. What? No. That's impossible. You two are, you and Liam. Were, I said, staring at the ceiling as a tear escaped and traced a cold path to my ear. My parents are covering for him. Dad told me it wasn't worth the hassle of me flying in. That is the biggest load of crap I have ever heard, she said, her voice fierce with the loyalty that had been my anchor since college. This has Chloe's fingerprints all over it. You said she was weird when you met her. The thought had been a whisper in my mind, but Maya's words gave it voice. At Christmas, I overheard her telling Liam she thought I was too independent to understand family. Code 4, I'm threatened by you, Maya declared. She sees your bond with him, and she wants to sever it. Classic insecurity playbook. We talked for almost an hour, Maya's validation a soothing balm on my raw emotions. What were you supposed to do this weekend? She asked before we hung up. I had a solo hiking trip planned. Up to the Black Balsam Knob. I was going to cancel. No, she said, her tone absolute. You are going. You are going to hike that mountain and breathe that clean air and remember who you are. Let them have their stuffy party at the yacht club. You're going to have a real celebration. Living beautifully is the best statement you can make. After the call, I lay awake, sifting through memories. The time we camped in the backyard, and he'd insisted on holding my hand because the sound of the crickets scared him. The way he hugged me on the curb the day I left for Asheville, his voice thick as he promised we'd talk every week. When did I become a liability? When did my presence become something to be managed and ultimately erased? The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a dull headache, but also with a quiet resolve. Maya was right. I would go to the mountains. I would not let their exclusion define my weekend. As I packed my hiking gear that evening, my hands stilled on the high-tech, waterproof jacket Liam had given me for my birthday 2 years ago. He had spent weeks researching it. Only the best for my big sister, he'd said, his face beaming as I'd unwrapped it. I almost left it behind, but it was my best jacket, and a stubborn part of me refused to let them take that, too. The memory of last Christmas resurfaced, sharp and clear. I had arrived at my parents' house to find Liam and Chloe on the sofa, their heads bent together over her phone. He'd given me a perfunctory hug before his attention was immediately pulled back to her. Later, in the kitchen, I'd overheard Chloe's voice from the dining room, where she was helping my mother. "It's admirable that Alara is so dedicated to her career," she'd said, her tone dripping with pity. "Some women are just more suited to being alone. Liam says she hasn't had a serious boyfriend in years." My mother had murmured something non-committal, neither defending me nor agreeing. A seed of unease was planted that day, a seed that had now flowered into this thorny, painful reality. As I zipped my pack, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Thinking of you, dear. Maybe Dad and I can come visit you next month since you couldn't make it for the party." Couldn't make it. As if it had been my choice. I silenced my phone and put it away. Tomorrow, I would drive west, into the heart of the ancient, silent mountains. I would not check for messages. I would not wait for an explanation that wasn't coming. I would simply walk and breathe and let the mountains hold my grief. The drive into the Blue Ridge Mountains on Friday morning was a bomb. As the highway began to climb, leaving the city behind, the vast expanse of forested peaks and the achingly blue sky began to work their slow magic. The knot of anger and hurt in my chest started to loosen with every mile. I had booked a tiny, rustic cabin at the base of the trail system, a place I'd stayed before, with a stone fireplace and a porch that overlooked a rushing creek. After dropping my gear, I changed into my hiking clothes, laced up my boots, and set off. The trail was steep and challenging, forcing my attention away from the turmoil in my head and onto the immediate reality of my body, the burn in my thighs, the rhythm of my breathing, the careful placement of my feet on the rocky path. For hours, there was nothing but the scent of damp earth and pine, the sound of the wind sighing through the trees, and the crunch of leaves under my boots. It was a walking meditation, a way of grounding myself when my emotional world felt untethered. But grief is a persistent hiking companion. A glimpse of a brother and sister laughing as they passed me on the trail sent a sharp pang through me. A family sharing a picnic at a scenic overlook reminded me of the celebration I was missing, the one happening in a different world, 1,000 miles away. By late afternoon, I reached the summit of Black Balsam Knob. The view was breathtaking. A 360-degree panorama of rolling, blue-hazed mountains stretched to the horizon, the peaks layered like waves on a vast, silent ocean. The wind was strong up here, whipping my hair across my face, feeling clean and wild. It felt like standing on the roof of the world. I found a sheltered spot among the rocks and sat, pulling a thermos of tea from my pack. I thought of Maya's words, "Living beautifully is the best statement you can make." It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. Reclaiming my weekend, my peace, my sense of self that had been so badly bruised. I pulled out my phone and propped it on a rock, setting the timer. I took a few photos. In most of them, I looked tired and sad. But in one, the wind caught my hair just right. The late afternoon sun lit up the golden and crimson leaves of the trees behind me, and for a split second, a real, unforced smile touched my lips. It was a picture not of defiance, but of resilience. I opened Instagram. My fingers hovered over the screen. I wasn't trying to start a war. I was just trying to document a moment of grace in the midst of my pain. I chose the photo and wrote the first thing that came to my heart, "Found my peace where the mountains meet the sky." Sometimes the family you choose for yourself is the one that truly sees you. So grateful for my little life here. I added the hashtags #BlueRidgeMountains and #AutumnGlory. I hit post. Then, in a deliberate act of self-preservation, I turned my phone off and tucked it deep into my pack. The rest of the afternoon was mine. The descent down the mountain was beautiful, the setting sun casting long shadows through the forest. That evening, I built a fire in the cabin's fireplace, read a book, and fell asleep to the sound of the creek, feeling more at peace than I had in days. On Sunday morning, I woke to the gentle sound of rain on the cabin's metal roof. I felt a sense of calm, a comfortable soreness in my muscles from the long hike. I made coffee, sat on the covered porch, and watched the mist curl up from the valley. It wasn't until I was packing my car to leave that I remembered my phone was still off. With a sense of detached curiosity, I turned it on. The deluge was instantaneous. My phone vibrated so intensely it nearly jumped out of my hand. A tidal wave of notifications flooded the screen. 32 missed calls, 58 text messages, voicemails, social media alerts. My heart began to pound again, that cold knot returning to my stomach. The names scrolled past: Mom, Dad, Liam, Isabel, my aunt, my uncle, even my grandmother, who communicated almost exclusively by handwritten letter. The first text I opened was from my mother, sent at 8:15 p.m. Saturday night. Alara, please call me the second you get this. Your post has caused a terrible scene. The next was from Isabel. What were you thinking? Everyone at the party is talking about your post. You completely ruined the vibe. My breath hitched. I clicked on a voicemail from Liam, timestamped 9:02 p.m. His voice was tight with fury. Really, Alara? Was that necessary? You couldn't just be happy for me for one night? You had to make it all about you? Chloe is devastated. Mom is crying. Thanks for hijacking my engagement party. I sank onto the edge of the cabin's bed, the room seeming to tilt around me. My quiet moment of peace on the mountain, posted around 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, had landed like a bomb in the middle of their celebration. The caption, so true to my heart in that moment, had been interpreted as a calculated, public strike. A text from my aunt contained a blurry photo taken from across a ballroom. It showed guests huddled in small groups, their faces illuminated by the glow of their phones. Another showed Chloe with her back to the camera, her shoulders shaking, while Liam stood beside her, his face a mask of anger. My father's voicemail was clipped, each word a frozen shard. Your lack of judgment is astounding. You have publicly and deliberately humiliated this family. I expect a call. Then, a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was from Chloe. The first and only direct communication I had ever received from her. I tried to give you the benefit of the doubt, even after Liam warned me how you always need to be the center of attention. Thank you for proving him right. I hope your hike was worth more than our happiness. That single sentence struck me with the force of a physical blow. Liam warned me. The idea that my brother, my Liam, would paint me to his future wife as some kind of selfish, attention-seeking monster, that was a betrayal deeper and more wounding than the party exclusion itself. Dana, my best friend from work, emerged from her room, looking refreshed. Her smile faded when she saw my face. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I think I might be one, I said numbly, handing her the phone. Apparently, I haunted my brother's engagement party. She scrolled through the messages, her eyes widening. This is a 5-alarm overreaction. A gallery-worthy exhibition of projection and guilt. But I did post it during their party, I whispered. With that caption. You posted a picture from your vacation, she said fiercely. A vacation you were on because they deliberately and cruelly excluded you. They lit the fire, Alara. Don't let them blame you for the smoke. Amid the storm of angry messages, one stood out. It was a text from my grandmother. My dear Alara, I was not aware you weren't invited. That was a serious misstep on their part. Your timing, however, was perhaps not ideal. Call me when the dust settles. By the time I started the drive home, the full picture had emerged. My post hadn't just been noticed, it had derailed the entire event. According to Isabel's dramatic follow-up texts, the party had devolved into factions: Team Alara, who felt my exclusion was wrong, and Team Liam/Chloe, who saw my post as a malicious act of sabotage. The irony was staggering. I had gone to the mountains to escape the drama, to find peace, and had inadvertently created a firestorm. But I wasn't trying to, I said to Maya on the phone as I drove, the mountains receding in my rearview mirror. I was just trying to feel better. Maybe that's what they couldn't stand, Maya said gently. The fact that you could find happiness without them. That you didn't just sit home and cry. You went out and lived. For people who need to control the narrative, that's the most threatening thing in the world. I wrestled with how to respond. A part of me, the part conditioned for a lifetime of peacemaking, wanted to apologize, to smooth things over. But a new, stronger part, the part that had found its footing on that mountain summit, refused. I sent a single text to Liam before turning my phone off again for the rest of the drive. My post was about my own experience, not a deliberate attack on your party. The fact that I wasn't invited is the real issue here. We need to talk, honestly, when you're ready. His reply came through hours later when I finally turned my phone back on in my own driveway. The damage is done, Alara. The drive back to Asheville had been quiet, a stark contrast to the journey out. But I knew the real storm was not in the mountains behind me, but in the family conflict that lay ahead. My quiet, innocent photograph hadn't created the fault lines in our family, but it had certainly triggered the earthquake. For 3 days, I lived in the strange quiet of the aftermath. I worked on a new design for a public healing garden, losing myself in the familiar comfort of contour lines and planting schedules. My parents' calls went to voicemail. I ignored the increasingly dramatic texts from extended family. There was only silence from Liam. It was a silence filled with 26 years of shared history, now poisoned by misunderstanding and betrayal. On the 4th day, I knew what I had to do. I booked a flight to Seacrest. The flight was a 5-hour exercise in controlled breathing. I rehearsed conversations in my head, anticipating accusations, preparing defenses. But when my mother opened the door of my childhood home, her face a carefully constructed mask of civility, I knew no amount of preparation would have been enough. Alara, we weren't expecting you. I figured it was time we talked in person, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I wheeled my small suitcase into the familiar foyer, the air thick with unspoken words. My father appeared from his study. So you've come to explain yourself? No, I said, meeting his gaze. I've come for an explanation. We sat in the formal living room, a room reserved for holidays and important guests, a pot of tea growing cold on the coffee table between us. Your behavior, Alara, my father began, was calculated to cause maximum embarrassment. My behavior, I countered, keeping my voice low and even, was to go on a hike after being uninvited to my own brother's engagement party. The real question isn't about my Instagram post. It's about why I was excluded in the first place. My mother wrung her hands. It was delicate, Alara. Chloe's family, they're very particular. What does particular mean, Mom? Does it mean they have a rule against inviting the groom's only sister? The silence that followed was heavy and damning. They exchanged a look, one of their silent, marital telegrams. We should wait for Liam, my mother said finally. He and Chloe are coming for dinner. The hours leading up to their arrival were agonizing. I sat in my old bedroom, now a sterile guest room, and stared out at the gray Atlantic Ocean. When the doorbell rang, I felt a tremor of anxiety. Dinner was a masterclass in tension. We talked about the weather, about interest rates, about a local zoning dispute. Liam and Chloe sat side by side, a united front of polite hostility. Liam wouldn't meet my eyes. Finally, over dessert, he spoke to me directly. Why, Alara? Why did you have to do that on that night? I posted a photo from a hike, Liam. That's all. It wasn't about you. Chloe let out a small, sharp laugh. Please. The timing, the caption, it was a textbook passive-aggressive attack. Her condescending tone snapped my carefully maintained composure. Fine, I said, turning to her. Let's be direct. Why wasn't I invited, Chloe? She flushed, glancing at Liam to rescue her. It was a joint decision, Liam mumbled, avoiding my gaze. We were trying to keep things simple. Simple? I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts. You invited Dad's law partners and Mom's entire garden club. You invited cousins we haven't seen in a decade. Don't insult my intelligence by telling me this was about keeping things simple. The dam of civility finally broke. Fine. Liam's voice cracked. You want the truth? Chloe was uncomfortable with you being there. She feels like you've never liked her, that you judge her, that you and I have this secret club she's not a part of. I wanted her to be happy. I didn't want the drama. The air left my lungs. And you? I asked, my voice a whisper. You were okay with that? You were okay with cutting me out. He looked down at his plate. I just wanted peace, Eli. I turned to my parents. And you too? You let this happen? You let your son exclude your daughter from his life to keep the peace. It wasn't our place to interfere in their guest list, my father said stiffly. We didn't want to make waves, my mother added, her eyes pleading. Make waves? I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. I have spent my entire life trying not to make waves in this family. I have been the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who smoothed things over. I was the one who parented your son when you were too busy. I was the one who protected him, who championed him, who loved him unconditionally. And in return, I am told my presence is drama and that it's more convenient for everyone if I just disappear. I looked at each of them, my family, my foundation, and saw the cracks running through it all. I'm not sorry for the photograph, I said, my voice clear and strong. I'm grateful for it. It showed me the truth. It showed me that in this family, my worth is conditional. I walked to the door and picked up my coat. I'm staying at the Harborview Hotel. If any of you decide you want to have a real, honest conversation about what's happened, you know where to find me. But I am done pretending. Walking out into the cold, salty air, I felt a strange and dizzying sense of release. The pain was immense, a deep, tectonic ache. But for the first time in my life, I had not swallowed my hurt to make others comfortable. I had stood on the ground of my own truth, even if it meant standing there alone. For 2 days, the hotel room was a quiet, sterile bubble. I ordered room service, worked on my laptop, and watched the boats in the harbor. The silence from my family was a resounding answer. Then, on the 3rd evening, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Liam. Alone. He stood in the hallway, his shoulders slumped, his face etched with an exhaustion that mirrored my own. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. He sat in the armchair by the window, and for a long moment, we just looked at each other. I'm sorry, Eli, he said, his voice raw. I was a coward. I messed up. So badly. He explained everything. Chloe's deep-seated insecurity, born from a family that valued appearances over all else. Her fear of our shared history, a history she could never be a part of. She saw your strength and your independence, and it scared her, he admitted. And I was so desperate to build this new, perfect life with her that I let her fear dictate my actions. I didn't defend you. I sacrificed you to make my new life easier. It was the worst thing I've ever done. His confession was not an excuse, but an explanation. It was the beginning of an honest conversation, the first of many. The healing was slow and incremental. It involved a tearful, difficult call with my parents, where my father, for the first time in my memory, simply said, "We failed you, Alara. We were wrong." It involved a long, heartfelt email from Chloe, apologizing for her fear and insecurity, and asking for a chance to start again. It took months. It took effort. It took a willingness from all of us to look at the broken pieces and decide we wanted to rebuild, but on a new foundation. 6 months later, at their wedding, I stood not as a bridesmaid, but as Liam's best person. Before the ceremony, he grabbed my hand. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes shining, "for making me be better." Later, Chloe pulled me aside. "He was right about you," she said, her smile, for the first time, reaching her eyes. "You're formidable. And I'm so glad you're my sister." I still have that photo on my Instagram. It's no longer a symbol of pain, but a testament to a turning point. It reminds me that sometimes, the only way to heal a family is to be brave enough to break it open. It taught me that my peace is not negotiable, that my worth is not determined by an invitation, and that healthy boundaries are the highest form of love, both for others and for yourself. It was a painful lesson, but like the landscapes I design, it was the clearing of the old, broken ground that allowed for new, more beautiful things to grow.